January 10th, 1907. Early morning, the blast furnace floor at South Works Steel Mill in Chicago is already awake. Molten steel moves through open channels carved into the concrete, flowing like a river of light. It glows white-orange at nearly 2,900 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt bone in seconds. The air shimmers above it. Men stand within feet of the channels. They always do. Their shifts began before dawn. They wear canvas jackets and cloth caps. No face shields. No insulated gloves. Just their hands and their eyes and the knowledge that the steel must keep moving. Then the floor fails. A ladle lip fractures. The crack is hairline thin, invisible under the glare. The steel does not splash. It surges. 40 tons break free in seconds. The molten mass rolls outward across the floor, faster than a man can run, faster than a shout can travel. Workers are knocked down by radiant heat alone before the steel ever reaches them. Clothes ignite, skin blisters and peels and peels. Some men are vaporized where they stand, their bodies consumed so completely that nothing solid remains. Others are driven backward against brick walls as the flood fills the casting pit. There is no alarm, there is no warning bell. Only a roar like a furnace breathing outward and the sudden wall of light. In less than a minute, the floor becomes a killing field. When the surge finally stops, when the steel begins to cool and harden into grotesque shapes, 146 workers are dead. Many are unrecognizable. Some are never recovered whole. Rescue crews find boot nails embedded in cooled metal. They find bones fused to the floor. The mill goes silent except for the hiss of steam and the crackle of residual fire. Outside, Chicago keeps moving. Streetcars run. Factories hum. Inside Southworks, men lie where they fell encased in steel. This is not an accident. This is not a freak event. This is the predictable end of a system built to never stop, never slow, never prioritize the men who feed it. This is the story of how molten steel was allowed to escape and why 146 men never came home. To understand the deaths, we have to understand why this mill exists at all. At the turn of the century, America runs on steel. Railroads stretch coast to coast, carrying grain and coal and timber across a continent that once took months to cross. Bridges rise over rivers that used to stop commerce cold. Cities climb upward, their skeletons made of I-beams and rivets. Steel is the skeleton of the new century. In 1907, the United States produces more steel than Britain and Germany combined. The tonnage is staggering. The demand is relentless. Mills operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Shutting down a blast furnace costs thousands of dollars per hour. Restarting it takes days. So the furnaces never sleep. The Southworks plant on the shore of Lake Michigan employs over 8,000 men. Immigrants from Poland, Hungary, Italy, Ireland. Farm boys from downstate Illinois who need the wage. Skilled rollers who shape steel into rails. Unskilled laborers who shovel coal and scrape slag. They work 12-hour shifts in temperatures that reach 130 degrees near the furnaces. The air tastes like iron and smoke. The floor vibrates constantly. The roar of the blowers is so loud that men communicate in hand signals. They earn between $1.50 and $3 per day. They send money home. They sleep in boarding houses that smell like sweat and kerosene. Steel is framed as progress. Newspapers celebrate output numbers. Executives speak of efficiency and national pride. The mills are called the engines of civilization. Danger is considered the price of growth. Nationally, industrial deaths exceed 35,000 per year. In steel alone, hundreds die annually, crushed by machinery, burned by molten metal, poisoned by gas, buried under collapsed scaffolding. Yet production targets rise every quarter. Safety measures slow output. Downtime is failure. Protective equipment costs money. Inspections interrupt work. This culture shapes every decision inside the mill. It shapes the thickness of ladle walls. It shapes the frequency of maintenance shutdowns. It shapes how close men stand to molten steel. The furnace floor at Southworks is no different. The steel must flow. wing. The schedules must be met, and the men must stand where they are told to stand, no matter what breaks beneath them. How the system works, the blast furnace never sleeps. Iron ore, coke, and limestone feed downward from the top in measured loads. The furnace roars at 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Molten iron collects in the hearth below, glowing like a pool of liquid sun. It is transferred into ladles, massive steel vessels lined with refractory brick designed to withstand extreme heat. Each ladle weighs dozens of tons when full. They move on overhead cranes, swinging slowly across open floors where men work directly underneath. Channels carved into the concrete guide the flow from ladle to mold. Everything depends on containment. The steel must stay inside the system. The brick must hold. The floor must bear the weight and the heat. Refractory linings crack with repeated use. Each heating cycle expands the brick. Each cooling cycle contracts it. Hairline fractures spread. Steel erodes brick invisibly from the inside, chemical reactions eating away at the barrier. Heat weakens the structural supports beneath the floor. The concrete itself degrades under thermal stress, losing strength with every pour. The system assumes constant monitoring, but foremen oversee dozens of men at once. They move between stations. They prioritize output. Workers rely on experience, not instruments. There are no temperature sensors embedded in the floor, no automatic shutoffs if a ladle begins to leak, no alarms if the refractory lining thins past safe limits. The floor beneath the ladle at Southworks is reinforced concrete poured years earlier during the mill's expansion. It has been patched repeatedly. Dark stains mark where previous spills have burned into the surface. The danger is cumulative. Each thermal shock adds stress. Each repair is temporary. The operation looks routine until the moment it isn't. Men stand at their stations. The crane operator moves the ladle into position. The pour begins. The steel flows. The floor holds. Until one morning, it does not. What kills workers here is not what they see, but what they cannot. Cracks form under heat cycles that no one measures. Brick spalls away inside the ladle lining, flaking off in chunks that fall into the molten steel or lodge in gaps where they should not be. Steel seeps where it should not, finding microscopic channels through degraded, refractory material. Workers notice heat shimmering in odd places on the floor. They see discoloration. They smell something burning when nothing visible is on fire. Some complain to their foreman. Maintenance requests pile up on clipboards in the supervisor's office. Management logs them. The requests are noted. They are filed. Production continues. Engineers know molten steel can undermine floors if a ladle leaks or if containment fails. Industry journals warn of breakout risks as early as 1903. Technical papers describe the physics of thermal erosion. They explain how concrete loses half its compressive strength above 800 degrees. They document case studies from mills in Pennsylvania and Ohio where floors gave way under prolonged heat exposure. These warnings are theoretical until they are not. They are published in journals that mill owners may or may not read. They are discussed at conferences that foremen do not attend. The men on the floor never see them. At Southworks, the ladle that fractures on January 10 has been in service for months. Its refractory lining is worn thin. The floor beneath it has been patched twice in the past year. The crane operator does not know this. The pouring crew does not know this. They stand where they are told to stand. They do the work they are trained to do. The steel begins to flow. The ladle tips, and the floor, weakened by invisible damage, gives way. This breakout is not the first. It is part of a pattern. Cracks form under heat cycles that no one measures. The refractory brick lining the ladles expands and contracts with every pour, every cooling period, every return to the furnace. Microscopic fissures spread through the material. Brick spalls away in flakes and chunks, crumbling from the inside where no inspector can see. Steel seeps where it should not, through weakened joints, through eroded seams, through gaps that widen with each shift. The molten metal finds every weakness. It always does. Workers notice heat shimmering in odd places on the floor. They see warping near the channels. They feel radiant warmth where the concrete should be cool. The air above certain sections vibrates like a mirage. The smell of burning changes, less like coal, more like something chemical, like limestone breaking down. Some complain to their foreman. They point to discolored patches. They mention the heat. Maintenance requests pile up on desks in the site office. Management logs them in ledgers. The requests are documented. They are filed. Production continues. The furnaces cannot stop. The schedules cannot slip. The steel must flow. Engineers know molten steel can undermine floors if a ladle leaks or if containment fails. The physics are simple. Concrete loses structural integrity above 800 degrees Fahrenheit. Molten steel at 2900 degrees does not need to touch the floor to weaken it. Radiant heat alone can destabilize the surface. Industry journals warn of breakout risks as early as 1903. Technical papers describe incidents at mills in Pittsburgh and Cleveland. They explain how thermal stress accumulates invisibly. They recommend regular inspections, thermal monitoring, and immediate shutdowns when cracks appear. These warnings are theoretical until they are not. They are published in journals that sit in office libraries. They are discussed at engineering conferences that mill foremen never attend. The men on the floor never hear them. At Southworks, the warnings are there. The cracks are there. The heat signatures are there. But the steel keeps flowing and the men keep standing where they are told to stand. This breakout is not the first. It is part of a pattern, the pattern. In 1904, a ladle breakout at a mill in Pennsylvania kills 11 workers in under 2 minutes. The ladle cracks during a routine pour. Molten steel floods the casting floor. Men are trapped against machinery. Some die from burns. Others die from asphyxiation as the heat consumes the oxygen around them. The investigation finds the refractory lining was worn beyond safe limits. The report recommends more frequent inspections. No enforceable standard is created. The mill resumes operation within a week. In 1906, another breakout in Ohio kills 23. The ladle does not crack this time. The floor beneath it collapses. The concrete, weakened by years of thermal cycling, gives way under the combined weight and heat. The molten steel pours through the failure and spreads across the lower level where a maintenance crew is working. They have no warning. They have no escape route. The investigation blames a structural defect in the original construction. It notes that the floor was not designed to handle sustained exposure to radiant heat above 2500 degrees. The recommendation is to reinforce similar floors at other mills. The recommendation is not binding. Most mills do nothing. Each investigation blames equipment failure, cracked ladles, degraded brick, poor concrete. The reports describe these as isolated mechanical problems, as if the equipment failed independently of the system that ran it into the ground. No systemic redesign follows. No industry-wide safety standards are mandated. The same floor layouts remain in use. The same operating pressures apply. Mills continue to run 24-hour shifts. Maintenance windows remain minimal. Ladles are used until they fail. Floors are patched, not replaced. Steel journals call these events unfortunate incidents. Trade publications express sympathy. They note the tragedy. They print the death tolls. Then they move on to production statistics and efficiency improvements. These breakouts are not isolated. They are not freak occurrences. They are warnings ignored. They are patterns denied. The data exists. The engineering knowledge exists. What does not exist is the will to stop production long enough to make the changes that would keep men alive. At Southworks in Chicago, the same conditions persist. The same worn ladles, the same patched floors, the same relentless schedule. And on the morning of January 10, 1907, the pattern repeats. the danger does not stop at the mill gates. Workers live blocks away from the Southworks mill. The neighborhoods that surround the plant exist because the furnaces do. Wooden houses line streets named after company executives. Boarding houses stand 3 deep on every block, filled with men who sleep in shifts. One group works while another rests in the same beds, still warm from the last occupant. The air smells like coal smoke and iron dust. It settles on windowsills. It stains laundry hung out to dry. Children grow up under smokestacks that never stop belching gray clouds into the sky. They play in yards where the grass grows thin and metallic dust coats the ground. 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week. The men leave before dawn and return after dark. They eat cold meals standing up. They sleep hard and wake exhausted. Families depend on mill wages. A laborer earns $1.50 per day. A skilled roller earns $3. It is enough to rent a room, enough to send a few dollars back to Poland or Hungary or wherever home used to be. It is not enough to save. It is not enough to leave. It is not enough to leave. Employment means exposure. Exposure to heat that blisters skin through canvas jackets. Exposure to gases that burn the throat and cloud the lungs. Exposure to machinery that does not stop when a man falls. Exposure to molten steel that does not forgive mistakes. Risk becomes normal. Men learn to sleep through the roar of the blowers. They learn to judge distance from heat by instinct. They learn which foremen push too hard and which ones let you step back when the air gets too thin. They learn to read the glow of the steel, to know when a pour is about to begin, to position themselves where they have a chance if something goes wrong. But normal does not mean safe. It only means familiar. There is no alternative work nearby. The mill is the largest employer for miles. The docks offer some labor. The stockyards offer some. But nothing pays like steel. Nothing hires as many. So the men stay. They stand where they are told. They work the shifts they are given. And on the morning of January 10, 1907, they show up as they always do. On January 10, the system reaches its limit. The ladle fractures at 6:47 in the morning. The crack runs vertically through the refractory lining and the steel shell beneath it. The structural integrity fails in an instant. The floor beneath the ladle, weakened by months of thermal stress, fails simultaneously. 40 tons of molten steel at 2,900 degrees Fahrenheit breaks free. It does not pour. It surges. The steel escapes at walking speed for the first 2 seconds, a glowing wave spreading outward from the fracture point. Then it accelerates. Gravity pulls it through the collapsed section of floor. It floods across the casting pit in a luminous sheet, moving faster than a man can run, faster than a shout can carry over the roar of the furnaces. The heat kills before contact. Men standing 15 feet away are knocked down by thermal pressure waves, invisible walls of superheated air that expand outward at hundreds of miles per hour. Skin blisters, lungs sear, clothes ignite. Recovery crews move across the hardened surface with crowbars and chisels. They find bodies fused to the floor. They find remains so fragmented that identification is impossible. Some men are recognizable only by the tools they carried or the positions they worked. Others are identified by wedding rings recovered from blackened bone. Many are never identified at all. Their names are lost with their faces. Some are buried together because there is not enough left to separate. The county provides mass graves on the edge of the city. Families wait outside the mill gates for hours, then days. They hold photographs, they shout names, they demand to know if their husbands, fathers, sons are among the living or the dead. Company officials provide lists, but the lists are incomplete. They are revised. They are revised again. Widows are told to wait. Children are told to wait. The waiting is unbearable. Pay envelopes are collected instead of men. On Friday, the usual payday, clerks distribute wages to family members at the gate. The envelopes are thinner than usual. Partial week, partial pay. Women take them in silence. Some refuse. Some tear them open on the spot and count the bills with shaking hands. A Hungarian laborer's widow receives $4.80 for 3 days of work. It is what her husband earned before the floor gave way. It is all the company owes. There is no death benefit. There is no pension. There is no compensation beyond the last shift worked. The neighborhood goes quiet. The sound changes. The usual clatter of men leaving for the morning shift does not happen. The boarding houses are half empty. The streets feel wider. Laundry hangs motionless on lines. Children stop playing in the yards. The smell of coal smoke remains, but the rhythm underneath it, the human rhythm of a working neighborhood, has broken. Families pack belongings. Some leave Chicago entirely. Others stay because they have nowhere else to go. The mill keeps running. The furnaces restart within a week. New men are hired to replace the dead. Investigators arrive. Answers do not. Reports cite material failure. The official investigation, conducted by state labor inspectors and company engineers, concludes that the ladle's refractory lining degraded beyond safe limits. The report notes that the floor beneath the ladle was weakened by prolonged thermal exposure. It describes the breakout as a convergence of equipment wear and structural fatigue. The language is technical. The tone is clinical. The word negligence does not appear. The word preventable does not appear. The deaths are described as the result of unforeseen material failure, as if the steel simply chose that moment to break free. No executives are named. The report does not identify who approved the use of the worn ladle. It does not ask why maintenance requests were logged but not acted upon. It does not question the 12-hour shifts or the refusal to shut down for inspections. No individual is held responsible. No manager is reprimanded. No foreman is dismissed. The fault lies with the brick, with the concrete, with the steel itself. The system that ran the equipment into failure is not examined. The pressure to produce, the cost of downtime, the absence of safety protocols, none of this enters the official record. Production resumes within weeks. The damaged section of floor is torn out and reapered with fresh concrete. New refractory brick is installed in the remaining ladles. Workers are told the problem has been fixed. They return to the furnace floor because they need the wage. They stand in the same positions. They perform the same tasks. The roar of the blowers returns. The glow of molten steel returns. The heat returns. Everything returns except the men who died. The floor is repaired. The system remains. The 12-hour shifts continue. The pressure to meet production targets continues. The practice of using equipment until it fails continues. Other mills across the country operate under the same conditions, the same worn ladles, the same patched floors, the same relentless schedules, the same disregard for the distance between profit and death. At Southworks, the furnaces burn as hot as they ever did. The steel flows as it always has. And the men who feed the system know that what happened on January 10 can happen again. The question is not how this happened, but why it keeps happening. Stopping costs money. Dead workers do not. The economics are simple and brutal. Shutting down a blast furnace for inspection costs thousands of dollars per hour in lost production. Replacing worn refractory brick requires a full day of downtime. Installing thermal monitoring systems requires capital investment with no immediate return. Hiring additional maintenance staff increases payroll. Every safety measure that slows output or raises costs is weighed against profit, and in 1907, profit wins every time. Dead workers cost nothing beyond the wages owed for their final shift. There is no federal compensation law. There is no mandatory death benefit. Families can sue, but the courts favor employers. The legal doctrine of assumption of risk holds that workers accept danger as a condition of employment. If a man dies in a mill, his family receives no pension. His children receive no support. His widow is left with whatever savings existed, which is usually nothing. The company replaces him within days. Another immigrant, another farm boy, another man willing to stand next to molten steel for $1.50 a day. Regulation is weak. States pass factory safety laws, but enforcement is inconsistent. Inspectors are few and underfunded. Violations result in fines that cost less than the upgrades they are meant to compel. Industry groups lobby against stricter standards, arguing that safety mandates will make American steel uncompetitive. Trade journals warn that excessive regulation will slow growth. Progress, they insist, requires risk. The men who take that risk are never the ones writing the editorials. Workers have no leverage. Unions exist, but they are weak in steel. Strikes are broken by replacement labor and private security forces. Immigrant workers, desperate for wages, cannot afford to refuse dangerous assignments. Complaining about conditions can mean termination. There are always more men at the gate, willing to take the job, willing to stand where the last man fell. The system relies on this desperation. It is built on it. The furnaces run because men have no choice but to feed them. The South Works breakout kills 146 workers and changes nothing. The investigation blames materials. The mill reopens, the pressure to produce remains, the worn equipment remains, the 12-hour shifts remain, and the knowledge that another breakout will happen somewhere at some mill under the same conditions, that knowledge remains too. What remains is memory. Some reforms follow. In the months after the South Works disaster, state labor departments issue new guidelines for ladle inspection. Engineers are instructed to measure refractory lining thickness at regular intervals. Floors in other mills are reinforced with deeper concrete and steel reinforcement bars. A few companies install primitive temperature monitoring systems near high-risk casting areas. Trade journals publish technical papers on thermal stress management. The industry acknowledges quietly that breakouts are preventable. The reforms are modest. They are not universal. They are not enforced with any consistency. But deaths continue across the industry for decades. Workers are still crushed by machinery. They are still poisoned by furnace gases. They are still burned by molten metal. In 1915, another ladle breakout in Indiana kills 17. In 1923, a casting floor collapse in Pennsylvania kills 9. The numbers decrease, but they do not stop. Safety improves incrementally, not because the system changes, but because workers organize, strike, and force concessions one mill at a time. Federal regulation does not arrive until the 1970s, more than 60 years after South Works. By then, tens of thousands have died in steel mills across the country. The lesson is unchanged. When production is sacred, people are expendable. The men who died at South Works on January 10, 1907, were not victims of fate. They were not casualties of progress. They were killed by decisions made in offices far from the furnace floor. Decisions to delay maintenance, decisions to ignore warnings, decisions to prioritize output over the lives of the men who made that output possible. Their deaths were preventable. Their names deserve to be remembered. This documentary remembers the 146 men who died not because steel failed, but because safety was optional. They stood where they were told to stand. They worked the shifts they were given. They trusted that the floor beneath them would hold. It did not. And the system that failed them continued largely unchanged for generations. The furnaces at South Works have long since gone cold. The mill has been demolished. But the pattern remains visible in every industry that treats workers as cost rather than lives. The story of South Works is not ancient history. It is a warning that echoes